Father of all lies. Madam. Good afternoon. Who is this, madam? Can you get us? Nobody's talking. Connection seems to be poor. Okay, since people don't want to cooperate, let's smash fire. We agree that we'll be discussing on one sample t-test today. All along, we have been trying to ensure that we cover the data that has to do with categorical variables. Most often, that has been a significant proportion of what we are doing. And so today we between groups, two groups are different. Or they're the same. Do we get that? Yes. So basically, we're examining main compares. I want to compare the means of two groups. Difference sample there's a pair sample more. So basically, whenever you want to compare the same or they're different, it's okay. It's okay now. Yeah. So comparing of the mean help you to determine, especially mean comparing one same, and particularly for parametric analysis and non-distribution. For instance, we may want to evaluate if the performance of women, right? The performance of women and men is the same in athletics. And during our concepts, we all agree that it has been verified that most of the times women perform different than men when it comes to athletics. That's why there is a separation. And if you have been following what is happening in the US, you will discover that there is a lot of discussion ongoing about gender. And they're trying to blur the difference between men and women, where even with respect to toilets, they say no, the statisticians keep between men and women. And so we want to say no, there are no differences between them. Do you think that if we say, okay, let's fight, put a man and a woman, can that fighting be equal? Do we think that we're putting two persons with the same equal strength, right? Yes. We say, should we run? Do we put the same women and men at the same length? If they're able to do to fight and come out, run and come up with the same results, they should have some similarities, because there are no similarities, you know. From 5, you don't want to give them the same exam, expect that they perform. So in statistics, when that difference exists, we're interested in knowing who does better, so that we can say, okay, going to university and not going to university might have no significant effect on your ability to get a job. If we collect data and say that those who went to university and those who did not go to university, they have the same rate of getting jobs, right? So going to university or not going will not influence your ability to get a job. But if we discover that those who have gone to university compared with those who have not gone, maybe they ended at an advanced level and went and did some maybe professional courses, that there exists significant difference in how they get jobs, then we know that university education has an influence on the ability to get a job. And if the university education is higher, or if by statistics Less of the network stabilizes, kind of disturbing. How we can see my screen now. The network has been disturbing, that's why. I hope it gets better now. So, so I may initial record. So, like I said, previously, we examined data when all the variables are categorical, right? When we're dealing with a chi-square, we said we often use chi-square when we have two variables and all the variables are categorical. And so in such a situation, we are expected to examine if there exists any variation, any association between the variables of interest. And because the variables are categorical, the best technique that we can use is the chi-square. And we saw that although we're using the chi-square, we also have to check some assumptions. We saw the assumptions before we can use chi-square. We set attempts. If the sample size is too small, we might not use chi-square, but we might use the Friedman test. That's what we insert. We saw how to run chi-square in SPSS, how to interpret, and we please mute yourself until when you have something to contribute, please. Always endeavor to do so. Right, that disturbs when we are teaching. So today we want to get to a situation where we're dealing with one variables that at least they're continuous, right? One of the variables is continuous, maybe another one can be categorical. And so what we use most often, we use mean. We talk of mean comparison. We want to compare the means are the same. And I started by giving some examples that many a times we are trying to see how two screens are different. Many a times we are trying to evaluate and conclude why there are differences in segregation in terms of class, segregation in terms of maybe say gender should be different, age should be an influencer, this and that, because we have evaluated and discovered that all of these elements, they influence the end result. Those who are elderly are more likely to contact disease than the young, right? Those who are educated, those who are rich, are more likely to. And it is because of these possible comparisons that we most often try to use we decide to use this inferential techniques to be able to draw conclusions. I don't know, my machine today is not giving me what I expected. So just bear with me. Misbehaving. I think I've sent the notes in the platform, right? Without the notes, you can follow from what is there. So I can connect this one. So if you want to follow this one, because it's making my system not to perform well. So I find it difficult to interact. Let's continue, please. So in doing comparison, there are different techniques that we use. But here, we'll focus ourselves, I think, on theory. We have the one sample t-test, the independent sample t-test, the pair sample t-test, the one-way ANOVA. We have one-way ANOVA, two-way ANOVA, and more, right? We will focus ourselves on this. And so, the first thing that we need to understand is that these different tests that we see, we use them under different conditions. And so before you choose which one to use to analyze your data, you need to check some certain assumptions, some certain there are some certain, let's say, criteria that you need to verify. If it's one, we just assume that, okay, there's one condition that this, before I use this test, must be available. So among the tests that we have, we've said one sample. And so with one sample, what happens is that we basically have a standard, and we want to compare if the performance from our data is the same or it varies. That's how we look at it, which means we have a standard, right? Then we choose independent sample t-tests, which it has different t-tests. We will have two groups, two unrelated groups, and we want to verify if the two unrelated groups, their means are the same or they're different. Do we get that? And for ANOVA, we have more than two groups. Can be 3, can be 4, can be 5. We have the PET. With the PET, we also have two groups, but the groups are related. So the first thing, one sample when we're dealing with a single data set with a non-population mean. With a non-population mean. Two samples when we're dealing with two groups and we want to get their means and evaluate if their means are the same. Then with a pair sample, the two groups have what? Repeated measures. For instance, we may want to evaluate the performance of students in a class for two different terms. So we have the same student, but we're evaluating the activities in two different time periods, right? So it's a repeated measure because each candidate or each student we have a score in the first sequence or in the first term and the second term. So we are evaluating if the performance of change. So most of the times, this type of analysis is done when we are doing maybe intervention. You are bringing in an intervention in a study. You want to come through and see if after bringing in a measure, there is a difference or not.
Okay.
Then we have the one-way ANOVA, one-way analysis of variance. We one way of analysis of variance. We use it when we have and mix. Puts on the mic. So with the one way ANOVA, I've even missed what I was saying. Where was I? Was I talking about the distraction? Okay. With one way ANOVA, we say we have more than 2 groups, right? Can be 3, can be 4, but these groups are independent. If we have groups that are repeated, we have repeated measure, right? That's why we talk about, we also have analysis of ANCOVA, which has to do with analysis of covariance, but we'll not see that in this class. So today, our interest will be more on the one sample t-test. And what are we going to look at? The one sample t-test, what it is, the assumptions that underline the test, and how we can use SPSS to run it, how we can interpret our results. So the focus is what is the one sample t-test, the scenarios that we can apply the one sample t-test, then assumptions that underline the one sample t-test, how we can use SPSS to analyze the one sample, and how we can interpret our results. So that's the focus, right? So what is the one sample t-test? Basically, if you can see from my slides, it basically says, we say that the one sample t-test is used to determine what? Whether a sample comes from a population with a specific mean. Now that may be more too statistic, the language. We are trying to evaluate, let's assume that you've collected data, you administer a questionnaire, or you went to a particular school and you said, okay, let me select from 5 students and take their performance. You say, okay, give me all your report cards. At the end of the day, you collect the report cards, right? And so you are asking if the performance of these students, the students from this school, or the Form 5 you have taken, comes from the same, is similar to the performance of all the students in Form 5 across the country, right? So do students in this particular school, let's say the Form 5 of this school, perform the same as students in Form 5 of other schools across the country? Now, which means a sample is your Form 5, and you must have what? The average performance of the students across the different schools in the country. Let's assume that the students perform across the country was, the average is 12 on 20. So we have 12 on 20. So what we are trying to do is, based on my data set, I collected for 150 students, right? And I calculate the average is maybe 18.5. Now, basically, this average is different. But the statistics, we are not always talking about it, just a mere difference. We're asking with respect to what? Significant difference, right? By mere descriptive statistics, we can conclude whether 13.5 is significantly different from what? 12.5. Do we get that? So that's when you now have to employ a test like the one sample t-test to be able to verify. The idea is that when you are using inferential statistics, it gives you the possibility to say whether the difference is not by chance, right? That the difference you are witnessing, let's say the difference is what? 1.5, since we have 12.5, 12 and 13.5. If this 1.5 difference is not by chance, it represents a statistical difference that will prevail in the entire population. That is the idea. So for us to do that, we cannot do that barely by comparing, barely by using our normal simple frequencies or simple mean and standard deviation. We have to employ now the aspect of what? The one sample t-test. Do we get that? So in other words, we have what? The known mean. So for you to be able to compare, you need to have the known population mean. The population mean will be what? The mean for all the other Form 5 students across the country. Another scenario could be that I have a standard. Let me say I'm producing, this is a key that I have, right? This key needs to have a specific dimension to be able to open a door, right? And so I want to produce about 150 doors across the country. But I want that all the doors, a single key should be able to open it, right? So I've given this job to a company and the company is producing. Now, because it might be difficult for me to take and test for all the different doors, I can sample 10 doors and take about 5 or 6 keys from this company, right? And evaluate. Now, if I take the 5 keys, I test 3, they open, but 2 doesn't. I still find it difficult to draw a conclusion, right? I can test further. Now, how do I know if what the company is producing fits? I must have a specific standard estimation. Maybe the dimension of this key should be what? 1 meter. Let's just assume there should be 1 meter for it to be able to open. But when the company is producing, we can have 1 meter, maybe 1.11, 1.21, exactly. But that variations can affect the ability of this key to open the door, right? So what do? I need to test that. You can't do it for all. If there were thousands of doors, it's difficult to test everyone, right? So you have to bring out the aspect of statistics to sample and test. You know the standard, and now you pick out, because there are thousands of keys that you are going to do that, you cannot test for all. So you pick out maybe about 50 or 10 and verify if the measurement is the 1 meter that you expect. So in such a scenario, for you to draw conclusion that I've tested 20, and I think that all the others will be able to fit in. You cannot just say because you tested the 20 and they were giving you 1.66 that they will do. You need to employ the one sample t-test. Any worry? Is it explicit? So in other words, we use the one sample t-test when we have a standard, right? And we now collect data for the sample. I expect that the average performance should be 12, or maybe it should be 10. At the end of the day, it's called that students are performing, some are scoring 10, some are scoring 11, some are scoring 9, and the rest. And for me to draw whether the performance is significantly different from my expectation, I can employ the one sample t-test. And we see that there is high application of one sample t-test in most situations, right? Yes, if you go to the market, when they're producing shoes, and they look at somebody like Madame Glory, they take her height, they take her gender, they take her size, and so they say, okay, Madame Glory, her shoe size should be 30, what is it, 37? They take 37. I'm estimating. So what they basically do is that they know that most of the person's shoe size will be 37. Or that when they take the age and everything, standard female is 38, I think it's 39, right? So that's why you go to a company, you discover that when they're producing, they go for 39, 38, 39, 37. Because most of the persons will fall around that area. But if you wanted to verify, go to a factory, you want to buy shoes, you will not be testing all, right? They have packed everything. So you pick up maybe 30 and measure and see that, okay, 37, 80, this and that. And you are able to conclude that, okay, based on the sample, I can say the rest of the shoes will give me the expected dimensions. You get that? I'm trying to give different samples, different examples, so that you see that if something is applicable, you go and give a job to a carpenter and say, produce me these doors. I've given you a standard. The carpenter produce over 100 and something doors. You will not be testing all. You sample 10 and you check. From there, you can draw conclusion. That's what monitoring and evaluation does. You go to a company, that's what they're doing. They have a standard and they check whether what the company is doing is the standard. There must be what that standard expectation, right? And you want to check if the standard expectation has been respected by the manufacturer or the person that you are assigned. I give you a job to do. I know what if you do this job well, this is my expected results. If you do and you don't, do you get that? So that is what the one sample t-test help us to achieve. Any worry? Any worry?
No, sir.
Okay. So, yes. Be audible, so are those online? Okay, we said before you don't need, now you need to have, when you are conducting, most of you don't necessarily have the entire population, right? But you know the mean of the entire population. If you check from the definition, it says what? Whether our sample comes from what? A population with a specific mean. We know the mean of that population. In our case, we know that we expect that the shoe sizes should be 38. That's our expectation. So that is the population, the average for the population. You don't necessarily have the population, but you know the average, right? For the schools, you don't have the average for all the, you don't have all the schools, but you know that the average should be what? 12. That the average, the national average is what? 12. And in US was 13.5. So you put the data and verify the software to verify whether that is by chance or is different. Do you get that? So that is the situation. So you need to have the known, the population mean must be known. Do you get that? Yes. Any other worry? So we've seen what it is, maybe cases of application, and what are the assumptions. Now, we want to verify the assumptions of the independent sample, the one sample t-test. Now, the first assumption is that your independent variable should be what? Measured at an interval scale. If I use the word quantitative, you know that we mean the same thing, right? So if I say your independent variable should be quantitative, we also know that we are referring to what? Interval or ratio. Or if I say your independent variable should be continuous, should be scale, so that we're using this word interchangeably. In some situations, there might be slight differences, but we're using them interchangeably: quantitative and continuous or scale. Do we get that? Yes, or interval or ratio. So that's the first. And we said that examples of data set that might be continuous, we have already done it. If we're measuring time in hours, we're measuring intelligence in IQ, maybe exams performance on 20 or on 100, we're measuring weight, and we have been seeing weight and height and size and all of those, right? They're quantitative variables. We can equally attach a unit to it. It'd be difficult to measure gender because we cannot attach a unit to it, right? As my own way for you to quickly identify whether a variable is continuous or not. Anything that can easily attach a unit helps me to quickly know that it can be quantitative. Well, it might not apply to all situations, but I derive that based on my understanding. Now, that's the first assumption. Now, the second assumption says that the data are independent. Now, the independence here simply means the sample you collect, right, should not be repeated within the population. Do you get that? The sample should not repeat itself within the data of the population. For instance, if I've collected the performance of students from 5 in a school, right? So the average must be calculated independent of the national average. Do you get that? Which means even if I had the national data, I must extract the data for my school and use it independent of what? The national data. Because there will be kind of repetition. Do you get that? So they should not, the observation should be independent, which means the data that you are using to compare with the population mean should be what? Different. Is it clear? It's not clear to you. So why is it not clear? It's not understood. To be independent, we do not do assignment. So we have said the data, your sample data, right, should not be used within the population data. Let me put it in. Do you get that? For instance, if you collected data from a particular school, right, and you are calculating the average, the data you have collected for that school should not be used at the same time alongside the data from the general population. You get it? Okay. Assumption number 3 says that there should be no significant outliers, right? There should not be significant outliers. And we earlier saw how to test for the presence or the absence of significant outliers in our. So, what can we use? We can use the box plot, right? We can use stem and leaf. We can use what again? We can even use the histogram if you know how to check that. We can equally use, yes. But when you impose a line, you are trying to check for normality. You get that? But the histogram will show you the area that is further away from the rest. So we can do that. We can equally use the standard deviation. The standard deviation, right? We can use the standard deviation, and we say that points that are 3 times away from the standard deviation, or above the standard deviation 3 times. It's a rule as such. So the fourth assumption is that data should be normally distributed. We can test for normality. We can test for outliers. Any question? Question there? No. Then we can continue. So we test for normality. Can we test for presence or absence of outliers or extreme values, right? Okay. So I have an example here. I've often used it multiple times. So we'll use it, then I'll give you another one to test. So the exercise goes as such. A manufacturer of high performance automobile produces disc brakes that must measure 323 millimeters in diameter, right? A quality control officer wants to check, right? And he or she randomly draws 16 discs made by each of the machines and measure the diameter. The question is, amongst these machines, can we say that what the machines are producing meets our expectation? So what is our expectation here? This is our population mean, right? The 322 millimeters in diameter. We're expecting that whatever the company is producing should be able to give us that, right? So you want to now test and verify if that is what has been done. And that's where we have to bring in the aspect of testing for one sample t-test. So based on this exercise, let me bring down, we need to go and check data. The data set we're using has been provided by SPSS. So SPSS has provided us data for us to use. And so to do that, you have to go to, I think you have to check data from SPSS, right? You guys have to do that. How to get the sample data provided by SPSS? Okay. Madam Gloria. Okay. Now, SPSS provided a sample size. They provide a sample data for you to use when you install the program, right? So the program, basically the data is stored inside your machine where we have the SPSS folder. So to access it, depending on the system you're using, you go to your PC, since all of us are using Windows, I believe. From there, you click most of it will be drive C, right? So when you click on drive C, you'll see program files. We have program files 86. I believe that we'll go with program files. Under program files, you'll see IBM. IBM, that is where your SPSS has been stored, right? You double click on it. Once you double click, you'll see SPSS. You double click again, see statistics. After that, you see the version from IBM as you keep opening and opening. So the version I'm using is 26. You'll see your own. Which do you have? Or you've not even located the folder. You open program files. If you don't see IBM under program file, open program file 86. Because your system, depending whether it's 32 or 64 bits, will give you. Yes. From IBM, you keep opening. You see the version 26. Now, when you click on the version 26, yes, there are some people with 25. Yes, 21, there's 25. Mine is 26. That's why I saw my 26. So from there now, you will go to, I hope I'm not forgetting. Samples. Click on the sample. When you click the samples, you'll see they'll give you languages. So SPS comes with different languages, English, French, German. So we take English, right? Except for, yes. So once you click the languages, you choose your English, we'll see now the data that SPS has provided. This is data for you to use for practice. You can open any one and see the variables included. But we are looking for a particular data set. I think the data should be titled breaks. Right? So have you seen any data there titled breaks? So we can copy the data, right click the data and copy. What's happening? She can't follow. Asha. So I now I've pasted my data set on my desktop. I don't know, you can put your own somewhere. So my data set, I open it, double click, open. So let me share for those who are online. I hope you follow the procedure. Now we have our data. This is the data provided, right? Once you take data, the first thing you always do is to understand the data first. Always try to understand your data first, right? Because you can just take and start analyzing. No. And in SPSS, you can go to the variable view. We go to the variable view, you look at the data. First, you have a data view, you have the variable view. So when I go to my variable view, what you will notice is that I have two variables. I have machines and break, right? Now, under machines, if I go to breaks, I discovered that all of them are continuous, although I don't think that all of them are really continuous, but then they have put them to be scale, right? But if I come here, I want to share something. Under machines, we discovered that we have the first machine has its own ID, 1, 2, 3, up to. They said there are 16 machines, right? From the question, somebody should not look at me and say I'm coming from a space. From the question, we said they randomly selected 16 ticks. And now the machine was producing, they had different printers. Let's assume they're different machines, right? There's one machine that's producing, the another one. So there were different, about 8 different machines. That's why we have this code 1, 2, 3, up to 8. If you check your data set, we have up to 8 because they represent different 8 machines. Do we get that? So these are the different output from the machine. So the first machine produces a disk that measures what? 322.003. The second one is 322.004. This is and that continuous. That's my data. I'm trying to understand the data, right? So, but the question I'm asking, I expected I should be 322, right? But what I see here is 322.003. Can I say that the what the machine is giving significantly differs from what I expect? That's the question we're trying to ask. What do we say? Is it significant or not? Based on the values, if you check the values we have, there is none that all of them, either they're 29, 321, or 322, but with some extra points and the rest. It's not clear. I mean, 321. It's not that wide. Frank, are you with us? So it will be difficult for us to, because for me, I look at 322.003 to be the same as 322 if I want to round it down, right? But the truth is that there's some scenarios that you want perfect measure, or the measure should be what? Slightly different. If this was a key, you know that extra gap might prevent the key from opening a door. Do you know that? Though it might be very negligible, but the door might not open, right? So you want something that should not be in a way that will prevent the system from operating. That's why there's a need for what? There's a need for you to test and verify if the produce are the same or different. So based on that, the next thing is that we want to check. So to do that, we can use the one sample t-test now to verify. Right? What should be our hypothesis?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Please, I've not been able to locate the data set yet. I've gone to my PC, local disk, DC, I've gone to program files, I've gone to IBM, I've gone to SPSS, then statistics. I've seen
statistics. You have seen?
I've seen 26, like you said.
Yes, open it.
I've opened it.
Click on the folder samples.
Sample. Okay.
It's open. You see the data in. After that, you click from samples. You see, I think there was languages. I don't know if you have seen languages. If you're not seeing languages,
yeah, I've seen it.
Yes, languages. Take
English.
So,
yeah. Okay, I've seen the sample. I've seen it now.
Yes. Are we okay?
Yes,
so
yes.
So, given that we have an expectation and we have our own data set now, we can verify if our data significantly differs from the expected outcome. Do you get that? So one sample t-test can help us. How do we use SPSS now to run one sample? Is the question, the next thing that we want to see. Now with SPSS, for us to do the one sample, we go to analyze. We see compare means. Under compare means, we have means, one sample t-test, independent sample t-test, summary independent sample t-test, first sample t-test, one way or another. We are working with one sample t-test. So we take on one sample t-test. Now we want to test the diameters of our variable. We take the variable that we want to test to the test variable option, and we give our test value means which standard are you testing? Do you get that? This is the standard you want to test. So we want to verify if the data is the same. So we put 322, which is the value that we're testing against. Under options, we may choose to test at 99. Let's test at 99, or we go by default 95. So under options we choose is 95. They say, how are we going to choose our missing values? Exclude cases by analysis, exclude cases by lead wise. I told you to go and check what those they mean. So, and we take continue. So from here we take okay. So when you're okay, you should have an output. I share my screen for those online. So we have our output. So I will go back to my PowerPoint, and I want to extract this. How do we report now our results? I want to give you a general guide that can help you on reporting your results. I want to give you a kind of a small template. Because I've discovered that one thing that most students face is reporting their results. So the first thing we have to do is that we need to copy out our results and bring them here to SPSS. I mean to Microsoft Word. I come here. You can click here. Have you seen my screen? And copy. Or let me just click here and copy the whole thing. I take to my Microsoft Word. Some people prefer to put their results under. So I'll clear this. I don't need all of this. I'll delete it. I hope these people are seeing mine. So I'm here. I'll delete. I want to format this. So we'll do formatting later. Most often, if you are looking at papers and how the results are presented, they mostly use APA style to present the results. So the APA style provides you how you can report your results. And this is especially for papers that you want to publish, right? You want to publish something, we are writing an article to publish, you want your results to be presented in this format. So the first thing is that there are a number of different t-tests that's just giving, but not my interest. My interest here is this. This is what is important. The basic format that you want to use. Did I get it right? Let me give an example here. Okay. This is an example that I want to bring. Session. So whether you are reporting, what I was saying here is that whether you are reporting the one sample t-test, the independent sample t-test, or the dependent sample t-test, even ANOVA, their reporting formats are almost the same. Do you get that? How you report the results are the same, so that when we get to the other ones, we don't have to do this. And so what do you do when you are reporting? Most often, you have to give your test value, which is a t value. It's degree of freedom. You need to write the degree of freedom, the test statistics that you've gotten, and the probability. These are the key information. But you don't just rush to provide this. You need to bring in your descriptive statistics first. Do you get that? First, you talk about your descriptive statistics. That's why if you check from what I wrote here, you'll see that this is what I wrote using the APA. A one sample t-test was performed to compare. What were you comparing? So we can say that we are comparing what? What was our question? The diameters. Is it the diameters? Let me just say the disc diameters, something like that, right? For the brakes or of our brakes. I think we are talking about the variable we are using here is the brakes, which is the variable of interest against the population mean. And what's the population mean? I'll give the value here, 322, right? So what was gotten? The mean value of the variable of interest here, the mean of our variable of the breaks from the machines was what? We come to our table here. What's the mean? 3. Let's put it to 2 decimal places. What do we have? Our mean here. We're going to put our mean here. What's the standard deviation? 2 decimal places will still give us this. The standard deviation of this. Right? So this was, which was, now you need to say whether it's higher or lower. So it's the same.
Hello, sir.
So what we do, we have seen that this is our mean, 3, 0, 0. Let's put 3 decimal places, please. If you put 2, you may not be able to say, and here is this, which was significantly. Now, if we want to draw whether it's significantly lower or higher, we need to come to this table and check. But what I want you to understand that at first, we are just presenting the means. We have presented that. This is the means that we got. So what do we say? The means that we have from our sample is approximately the same as the mean from the population, right? Although we can say that the mean from our sample is higher, right? We are assuming that it's higher because we want 3.000, but this one 0.0013. So now for us to say whether the mean is higher or lower, we come now to this part of our table. We have our mean difference. The mean difference is the difference between the mean we have had, right, and the population mean. And this is the value here, right? And so for us to draw whether the mean difference, that difference is significant or not, we need our t. So we go back now, we take our t value. This is our t value. We take the t value and its degree of freedom. What's the degree of freedom? 1227, right? So we come here, we say with our t, 1227, sorry, 17. What's it? The degree of freedom here, 127. What's the t value that we have gotten here? You put the t value here. I'm trying to give you kind of small template. What is probability? We check this way, you check the probability. The probability, this is a probability, right? We saw it the other time, right? Significant here stands for the p value. So this is our p value here, which is the same as probability. What's the value is 0.038. Based on what we stated the other day, can we say that's significant or not? Based on what we said, how to conclude whether the test is significant or not? Can we say that it's significant or not? I didn't get you. Who is talking? In some cases, some persons will put, when they're writing standard deviation, especially health sciences, will put plus or minus. There is something like this. Like that. Your mean. Our mean, this is our mean here. Put the mean here. And the standard deviation is the same way we have used here. So anybody reading this will know that we're talking about this is the mean and this is the standard deviation, right? I'm giving you different possible scenarios. Either you put it like this, the mean and the standard deviation, or you use plus or minus. Remember, most often standard deviation goes with plus or minus sign. Do you get that? So that's one way. So my question was, we have had our t value, which is this, right? and we have our probability, which is this. So what is our conclusion? Is it significantly different or not? You don't know. Why? Why? You're not seeing the value. 0 point, let me change the color, or let me put it black. Let me remove the color. Madam Glory, you're quiet. Are we safe? Are you sure? So, what do we say now? Is it significant or not? Somebody say, can't see my screen.
Yeah.
Is it significantly different or not?
It's been a while now. I'm not seeing it again.
Do you see now?
No, sir.
So next, do you see my screen?
Hello, sir.
Do you
No,
see
sir,
my
I can't
screen?
see,
Yeah. Yes, I can see your screen, sir.
Then Frank, the issue should be from your end. Maybe you need to
Maybe
sign out and sign in again.
Okay, let
So,
me do that, sir.
the question I'm asking, can we conclude that there's significant difference? Now, what we said previously, I expected that we should know if we're testing at 95, then our test value is 0.05. Now, the rule of the thumb says if the test value, right? If our p-value, if p is less than 0.05, it implies the results are significant. While the reverse is true. Since we're testing at what? 95. So looking at our p-value here and comparing with 0.05. Looking at our value here and comparing it with this, can we say it's significant or not? It's significant, right? 0.038 and 0.05, which one is higher? No, 0.038. How I make it simple for me is that I basically convert the decimal places into percentages so I can easily do the comparison. For instance, if I convert my 0.038, it will give me what? 3.8%. 3.8%, and that is less than what? 5% I'm testing. So I know that 3.8% is less than 5%, so I can go ahead and use my, I can go ahead and say my test is what? Significant. But what is the implication? It's not enough to say a test is significant. So would have said that the mean value for breaks from the machine was this significantly higher. So we'll come now and choose the what? Right? Higher. We can either take difference, especially when we're dealing with what? Comparing one sample. It can still be different. Right? Or use the word different. Or higher. If you are using the word higher, is because we want to indicate that it's above, right? Or you just enter as different. If you enter as different, we may need to say which is higher than in either way. So we can say based on which are the higher than the population mean. We give you a value that this is just like a simple, most basic way to present your inferential one sample t-test. Any question? Pardon? But what's the implication of this? It therefore means that if you were there, so the question I'm asking, if you were the quality control expert, what will you tell the company that is producing this machine? Because that's the essence. The analysis itself has given you the figures, but you need to give interpretation and meaning. So what would be your conclusion here? As a quality control expert, what are you going to tell the company? So what will you do? Because that's, you were not just running the test, there's a reason why you had to do so, right? So what will you do? We're all quiet. Glory. What will you thinking? Sanders, what will you say? What will be your conclusion? You are the statistician. You want to tell the company what they should do. Whether you are management or the management of the company that is producing it, you have to give an advice. What will you tell them? Sonny? I should go for a break. I'm not serious. How you tell me? I don't think I'm still thinking as an answer. Again, from now on. Okay. So, if you were a quality expert, you tell them that what the company is producing is not commensurate with what we expect. It's higher. So it will not give us the best result. Right? It's significantly different, which means our expectation was that it should give us 323. Although you see that it's 322. Although we see 322.002, the system tells us that that's little 02 added to it has a negative effect on our results. And that 002 is significant because if it was a door, it means that door might not open because of that extra input. Do you get that? So it means the produce from these machines were not acceptable. Do you get that? Is it okay? Yes. It can be higher, it can be lower, it can be exactly the same. So we expect that it should be the same. Whatever we should have should be the same. So they should fit well, but now it's higher. No, now the conclusion would depend on the context to an extent, right? For instance, if I wanted to fit maybe I want you to produce me some covers, I can cover this one, right? If it's bigger, higher simply means it's bigger than what it will cover. I've given you the dimension of this one. You go and produce something that's bigger, it will not cover well. If it's too small, it will enter inside. You need to see from that dimension. So you want something that should fit exactly, right? Even if there's a difference, the difference should still be in such a way that it should still fit, right? It may not fit that well if there's a slight difference, but a significant difference means the difference will not either overfit or underfit, depending on whether it was higher or lower, right? But since one is higher, is above, it means with our hole that we have produced here, we want to cover it, it will not be able to cover because the difference is far higher than expected. If it was below, it means the difference is lower, the what we have, the cover may be lower, smaller than expected. But if it was the same or insignificant, it means that what the difference from our expectations are not significant. So what the company is producing will fit well. As a simple example for it. Yes, it's the opposite on. That's why you need to understand that significant must not necessarily mean that it's good. Significant must not necessarily mean that it's good. It depends on your hypothesis, it depends on your expectation. Our expectation is that it should give us something which is equal to this. But what we have received is different from, and not only different, but significantly different. Do you get it? Do we get now the difference? Yes. Is that we are expecting something, and so if it should be different, it should not be. It's like, I like red. I'll send you to the market to go and buy me a dress that the dress should be red. You went and did not buy red, but bought a color far away from red. I might not take the dress, but it was somehow maybe purple-like or kind of, no, I mean, pink-like or orange-like. I might still like it because it's still somehow around red. So significant difference simply means that it deviates from expectation much in this particular case. Do you get it? It's not a universal principle. The association, you may want it to be higher. If it's higher, I'm good. Like performance, if it's still from school, let's assume this was performance. So you discover that maybe we're comparing two schools here, or your school now with that of what? The other school, or with the national situation, right? You can take any case and put here. Let's say, okay, this was the performance of the national, the national performance, and this is your own performance. So the first thing you see from this same results is that my school is performing better than the national, and it's higher and significant. Now it means that you are better placed because your students are performing far better than the overall. It's the same situation, but now with different meaning and different explanation and interpretation and different recommendation. But in this situation, the reverse is true because I expected that you should be this, but you have not given me what I wanted. You have given me something that's far higher than what I expected. I won't be happy. So we cannot use what you sent to us because it's far higher than our expectation. Do you get it? So this is the same example that we're using, but you can apply it in different settings and give different meanings. Do you get it? So your hypothesis must know it. So somebody said, what if it was 0.4? It's still less than 0.05. So if it was 0.50, point this will be insignificant. Because normally the rule should here. That brings us to a point. If the point here is that it should be less than or equal, it should be less than, it should not be equal to. If you check here, your P should be less than 0.05. Now, for an advanced statistician, we could have concluded this without using even the probability value, right? We can use the lower and the upper bounds to draw that conclusion. We can use the lower and the upper bound confidence interval. Now, when I take the from 95%, so what happens is that I have my lower variable, I have the upper. I check the signs. I have to check the signs. Now, checking the sign means if this one is negative and this one is positive, it means my test is insignificant. So negative and positive implies insignificant results. Negative and negative implies significant results. And positive and positive implies significant result. as well. So I could use this to verify negative, negative, insignificant, negative, negative, significant, positive, positive, significant, negative, positive, insignificant. So if I was using this principle and I have negative, negative, it implies my results are insignificant. But what we had was what? Positive, positive, right? Maybe had positive, positive. The role of the number line. Is clear? Okay. Good students. Another advanced statisticians may still use just the t-value to draw the conclusion. Now, however, before you use the t-value, you may want to, you need to have the standard t distribution table. You may need to have the standard t distribution table. And so now at 95% confidence interval, the t-value, 95% confidence interval, the standard t value should be, I think it's equal to 1.96, if I'm not making a mistake. 1.96. 1.96. Do we get that? At this level. So, in other words, if I check this value and compare it with this one, I see that this one is higher, right? So most of the times, for statistician, if this t-value is more than 0.2, is more than 2, and you're testing at 95, then implies that your results will be significant. In most situations, most of the tests that you see, it will still give you significant results. But I don't want to recommend this one for you now, because for you to do this, you need to have a good understanding of the standard t distribution. You can get the standard t distribution online. I don't want to go there now. So, are we okay? Are we okay? So, very explicit, right?
Yes, sir.
So, now the next thing I want to bring to us, which, let's get back to our data and see something. So, given that the company was using different machines to do the produce, right? They have label machine 1, machine 2, up to 8. Yes, we have checked and we have discovered that the machines are producing, what the machines are producing is significantly different from our expectation. But we're asking, could it be that some machines are the one responsible so that we don't have to discard everything? We have to select some, right? It's possible, right? You're trying to say, okay, let's say for somebody who has been printing, you know that you can have 10 printers, but there's one that will printing very poor, there's one that's printing very neat, right? So since I printed work and they went and checked the work and discovered that the work was not that good, and maybe this work came from a particular printer, instead of me destroying the entire work, let me check which printer is responsible, and so that we can discard just the work from that particular printer and stop using the printer. That's the same ideology. I'm bringing the printer setting so you see how it can work in our local, right? So what we do is that we need to now test this, but not as a composite variable, combining everything, but we need to separate the different machines and test. Do you get that? So if I were to do that, I could now say, okay, one way could be that I copy this and put it in a different SPSS data set and do the testing. But that's not needed. In SPSS, we want to use this icon to this split. Now, split data help you to split a single file into different layers so that you can test individually. So if I come here, you see what I'm touching, right? You click split. It opens your data set and we say compare groups. We want to compare groups. Which groups are you comparing? We are comparing, we want to compare groups. All cases do not create groups. compare groups, organize output by groups. So what am I testing? I want to test these machines. So I send here and I take, okay. Assuming that has been done. Once we take okay, you come back here. If we run the same test now, we'll have different results. It's the same thing that we have done, right? This is what we did, but now it's different. I don't know if you understood that. So now they have produced different outputs. This is now at the first machine, it was level 1, right? At about 16 machines, that's why we are going to be 16, which means there are all the samples collected from machine 1 were 16 of them, right? So machine level 1, we took 16 samples from that machine. And what is the mean? The mean is 321.9998 this thing, the standard deviation of this. Same for 2, same for 3. For us to check and take conclusion, we need to come now to the one sample t-test. The first one gives us the normal, just descriptive statistic, the mean and standard deviation, right? And then any other related information. But now we come here now, we have the one sample t-test. We have now our first machine. We have its value, the t-value. We have the degree of freedom. We have our what? How do we call this one?
P-value.
We have our p-value, or the significant value, or the alpha value we have to test. We have our degree mean difference. And what do we have? Our lower and upper boundaries for us to test at 95% confidence interval. The question I want to ask these wonderful students, looking through our results, which of the machines are significantly different and which are not significantly different? Remember what we just said a few minutes ago. And for us to do that, I want you to interpret the results. Pick 2 machines, one that is significant and one that's insignificant, and write out your result using the template I just presented earlier. Write out the results. There's needless rushing when we cannot do simple practical. So this is our results here, right? So, or I may share so that we say, how many of us are here now? There are 8 machines. Altogether, 8 machines are 4 students and online. So what we do, we take 1, she takes 2, you take 3, take 4, then you take 5, take 6, 7, 8. So it's going like that, based on the numbers here. So write out your results. I'll give you 10 minutes to do that. A piece of paper, or you can type out using the template I shared earlier. So do that online, and also, please, the important thing is interpretation. It's not hard to run this. It can take 2 seconds to run, but interpreting. Pardon. Should I should put back the screen?
Yes, sir.
So you want to do copy work?
So my screen, I was not even seeing your screen when you were presenting it. I was complaining.
But do you see now? So
Yeah. Very thankful. At the moment now, for the work is common position, it's one of the screen. So now, I went for you. I think for the you cannot have their way, I guess around. It's not your way. The language of that house. Because before yeah, yes, and like even so belonging, like this, right?
Are we done? Where is it again? Always depend on the delegate. Yes, those online.
Yes, sir.
Yes, tell us your result.
For my result for machine 1 is not significant. Machine number 2 is significant. Machine number 3 is not significant. Machine number 4 is significant. Machine number 5 is not significant. Machine number 6 is not significant. Machine number 7 is significant. And machine number 8 is not significant.
You did well, just that you did not write out the results that were expected. I said present the results, at least sample you want. How you present it.
Okay.
Yes. One sample test was performed to compare the diameters of the break against the population is this. The mean value of machine 3, bracket is this, was insignificant, significantly lower than the population mean with C15, this. And from machine, it was insignificantly higher than, therefore, the two machines come from our population. Read out your results, I think. Read them out aloud. Frank, read your results out aloud. I'm listening. Sunny, raise your hand. Let me hear. What about you, madam? Now, it's important for you to note that we don't need to use all the different things. One, the results must align. Just giving you alternative ways to. It was not like you need to. Yes, but they should all agree, right? If they disagree, then there's something wrong somewhere. We expect they should all agree. So with that, which machine should we keep and which one should we not? Looking at the overall results. Should we keep number 1? So we have checked number 1 and we see that it's insignificant. The implication is that what we have found from the machine or that they produce from the machine do not significantly differ, right? So we can keep it. Number 2, we discard. Number 3, we keep. Number 4, what do we do? Number 4, we discard. Number 5, some people say we keep, some say we discard. So which ones do we take? We keep. Number 6, number 7, number 8. Okay, that's the conclusion we're making. So that's the importance of we dig. That's why with statistics, you always have to dig deeper, right? Once you go deeper, you can see more information that from the surface you will not be able. Do you get it? Yeah. If we limited ourselves to just testing the overall situation, would have said no, this company is not doing well, so we discard everything from that company. But once we decided to check deeper and see if the output varies with respect to the different machines we have that. Now, why I brought this exercise was one for us to locate. If I did not tell you how to locate sample data in SPSS, that was one of the reasons. The second reason was to show you how to split a file. All right. Yes, you may have a file that warrants you to split it, and the third was for us to run this particular test. And so I'm sure without any question, we should be good as one sample t-test is concerned, right? Any question again?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, when we're splitting the data sets, how do we determine in which number we should split? Like in this case, each machine was producing 16 breaks. So how do we determine in which how to group them? Like which group should have how many?
Now we use when we go to, that's why. Let me go back to the data set that we're using and show you something there. Where is the data? This is the data. The variable we used was the machine, right? This is a variable we use for splitting. Now, which means if we had another variable here, if we had other variables here, the data would have been splitted also. So what the system does is that it checks through wherever it sees, these are like codes representing different machines. So they'll see that, okay, all of these constitute the first, this constitute the second, and so they're using this code to graduate. So the separation will be based on how many codes you have here. Do you get that? For instance, let me share this other data set. Share this one. The data set that we have been using, sample data set 2014. I may want to analyze this data. And the way I want to analyze is that I want to separate male and female without necessarily sharing the data set. So I come here, I take which variable I want to use. Take if condition is satisfied, and then I send no. This one is selecting cases, but not splitting the file. If I want to split the file, I still click here. Yeah, it's the same thing. Sorry. So if condition is fulfilled, I put this one is different from what we did earlier, right? If I put 1, then what happens is that 1 corresponds to which variable? Maybe it's male. If I take continue now, you go back to the data set, you discover that in this data set now, wherever we have 1, will be strike off. This is gender. I'm trying to use gender. 1. That's strike off where we have 0 here. So instead, we're keeping the value 1. So if I run this analysis now, let me say I want to do descriptive for height that we saw earlier. So your output now gives you the height 65. The height 65 was for what? Female. People have forgotten. When we separated our data and we said male and female, the height for female was 65 and male was 71 or 73, something like that, if I'm not making a mistake. So which means we have extracted the data just for female and we're using. So that's another way of extracting the data, right? Then we splitting, the way we did splitting was that, now since I've splitted this data, I want to unsplit it, I will come here. I click here. Actually selected by cases. But splitting is different in that you will not strike out, but we'll share the data into 2 different groups. Using, if I come here now, I go to, this is under data. I can select cases which will give me a similar result, or I split my file. So how do I want to split? I want that it should analyze the data now so I can compare with groups. So I can still take it now and bring it here. I take that is, I take my gender, I bring it here. So when they go to the variable gender, they will segregate it into different categories of the variable, right? So if I analyze this data now, let me take, let's take descriptive again. And this time I will still maintain the height. If you run it now, you discover that the output is different, right? They give you that for male and that for female. We split, you simply spread the same, you just, right? You separate the file based on the different categories. But with select cases, you extract maybe particular data to work so that they leave out the others. Is it clear? So I hope I've answered the question, sir. Any other question? Any other question? No question? Nobody's talking. So I have an assignment here that you need to do. This is the assignment. Assignment says you hear a lot of talk about increasing global temperature. So you decide to see for yourself if there has been an change in recent years. You know that the average land temperature from 1951 to 1980 was 8.79 degrees Celsius. You find annual average temperature data from 1981 to 2017. And decide to construct a 95% confidence interval. Because you want to be sure as much as possible and look for differences in both directions, not just one. Use this data to test for the differences with the previous average. So we have the data, and you are expected to. The results are quite straightforward. And we're saying that you use one sample t-test to do that. Okay. So I'm sending an assignment online to do and bring class tomorrow. You have a class tomorrow, so you have to do this overnight. Pardon? You don't like me? Huh? So what do you do? You follow online, huh? Follow online. If you cannot come here on Monday, follow. There's no time. Then you look for after class, contact any of your friends, sit and do it. Go. Okay, I think I would do. I don't think so. Yes, there's some people who are some persons who are praying that should forget. We're saying the same thing. We all understand. But there's somebody whose prayer is I should forget. Okay. There's somebody who is praying that I should not forget. Okay. Go and do that one. Come and see independent sample t-test and dependent sample t-test tomorrow. I think that's what we'll cover tomorrow. So with that said, I think we'll end today's class here. And that should be all for today. So for those online, bye. Or anything?
No, sir.
Okay.